Hey friends, so you asked for this over on my Instagram. I actually posed the idea just because it was late at night. I was scrolling through random memes. I just found this meme where it was really funny. I don't know why George Clooney was on the meme, but it was basically the struggle. It was along the lines of the struggle of a barista, and then it had something to do with macchiatos, and when you give them the macchiato and that's not what they want, they as in the customer. It's funny for a barista. A lot of people were like, please help me figure out coffee beverages or cafe beverages because I have no clue. Now, I was a barista for a number of years. My first experience being a barista was at Bouchon Bakery in Manhattan, Midtown Manhattan. I worked there for a little less than a year, and then I also was a barista at a museum in Queens for several years. So combined, I think I had about 3 to 4 years experience being a barista, and I will tell you it is different than being a Starbucks barista. So if you were looking for something that is very specific to Starbucks, you're gonna have to go to someone else because I am not that person. Another thing to note is that I'm not a pro at tea beverages. I will try to give whatever I can in terms of tea beverages, but if I miss anything, just let me know and I will be happy to answer your questions to the best of my ability. And let's get right into this. This list is mainly coffee, so just a heads up. Black coffee, that's just drip coffee, black, nothing in it. You can add whatever you want, and that's coffee. I don't think I needed to explain that. Latte. Lattes are probably the most popular coffee drink that baristas have to make. It starts with a shot of espresso and then steamed milk. That's literally it. Now, a lot of people confuse lattes with cappuccinos. They're very different in my opinion. Though a latte is espresso with steamed milk, a cappuccino is an espresso with very frothy steamed milk. It's more airy than the latte. The latte is just, hot milk. But when you're drinking a cappuccino, like, you can tell when you get that cup, it's very light. The milk has been so aerated that it's almost like a fluffy cloud on top of your espresso. Big difference between latte and cappuccino, and they taste different, trust me. I tried them all. Depending on the size, you'll get different volumes of espresso. So small would have 1 espresso shot, a medium would have 2, large would have 3. You can ask for more if you want. And yeah, it goes from there. Americano. Americanos they're so fascinating to me, but Americanos are a shot of espresso, or it's actually 2 shots of espresso, the way that I made it, because I wanted to make sure it was good. A small Americano would be 2 shots of espresso and just hot water on top. And then you can add in your milk, sugar, whatever you want. Now, that sounds a lot like a coffee, right? Like a regular coffee. In my opinion, it is almost exactly the same. I mean, obviously the brewing process is different, but yeah, it's sort of like a drip coffee. I've tasted them back to back, like one right after the other, to see if there was a big taste difference. In my opinion, the drip coffee tastes better, and I can only assume it tastes better because the dripping process is slow, and it goes through this whole process that takes time, as opposed to an espresso, which is very quick and condensed, and then you're just throwing hot water on it. That's just my opinion, but a lot of people love Americanos. I'm not gonna judge you for it. I just prefer drip coffees, and if we're gonna compare 2 coffees that are very similar, I think they are very similar. Don't come at me saying that I haven't really tried it. No, I've really tried it. I really did. Espresso. So espresso is a very concentrated shot, like I've been saying. It is very potent and strong and delicious and bodied, and it was my favorite thing to drink. If you're not a super coffee lover, you're not gonna, I wouldn't say you wouldn't like it, but it's strong. It's extremely strong. It's probably the strongest thing that you can get. If you ask for a shot of espresso, you're getting a tiny cup with a tiny little bit of beverage in there. So just a heads up, that's not something that you slowly sip and, enjoy the mood. It's something like, this is gonna get you through the day kind of thing. And that's exactly why I love them so much. Doppio is 2 shots of espresso. That's literally it. Cortados, one of my very favorites, my go-tos. And it's basically a shot of espresso with the same amount of steamed milk on top. Now, it sounds a lot like a latte, and it's almost like a latte, but the coffee concentrate is a lot more potent because you're using less milk. So when you're getting an 8-ounce or a 6-ounce cup of coffee, it's going to be like this much steamed milk and this much espresso, right? So when you get a cortado, it's the same amount of espresso, it's just this much steamed milk. So that means you're getting a more powerful punch in a smaller beverage, as opposed to like a diluted latte. Now we have macchiato. This is the most controversial drink ever, thanks to Starbucks. When you go to Starbucks and you ask for a macchiato, specifically a caramel macchiato, you're gonna get a luscious and delicious and sweet caramel latte. That is what a caramel macchiato is at Starbucks. And what's also really fascinating about Starbucks is that you can order an actual macchiato, like a real macchiato there. But when you ask for like a caramel macchiato, it's a completely different beverage. Logic? I don't know where it is. Starbucks, you do your thing, but it's not correct. A real macchiato is, like what I said about the cortado, you're gonna get an espresso, and then you're gonna get the same amount of steamed frothy milk. So like I said, with the comparison between the latte and the cortado being very similar, but less milk in the cortado, it's the same with a macchiato and a cappuccino, just less frothy milk in the macchiato. You have no idea how many times I've worked at the museum and had people come up to me, ask me for a macchiato. I hand them this little cup and their hearts just break. Or they go the other route, which a lot of people do at baristas, and they have a fit over what the hell I just passed them for a dumb amount of money. Like, let's be real. These are fancy coffees, so they're gonna cost almost the same as your caramel latte that you're getting from Starbucks that they're calling a macchiato. I'm just here sharing the facts. I hope that cleared things up for you. If you're at Starbucks and you order a caramel macchiato, you're safe. But if you want a caramel macchiato that you got from Starbucks at somewhere else, you're gonna have to ask for a caramel latte. Red Eye, I've actually had it before, and I don't know if coffee is just not effective to me anymore, but it's not that bad. But it's basically black coffee with a shot of espresso on top. I know, it sounds so wild. It tastes really good. Some people get double red eyes. I've actually had a handful of times where somebody ordered a triple red eye, which means you just add more shots as they ask. So red eye 1 shot, double red eye is 2 shots, and triple red eye is 3 shots of espresso on top of black coffee. That's one of the more interesting ones. Okay, here's a fun one, mocha. We didn't serve a lot of flavored beverages in regular coffee shops. Starbucks definitely holds reign for these flavored combinations and stuff like that, so I'm not going to be so helpful with those, but there's one syrup that is always readily available at most coffee shops, and that is chocolate, which is what is used to make a mocha. So the way I make a mocha is a pump of chocolate syrup, and then I brew the espresso on top of that syrup, and then I just take a stir, and I actually stir it together so that the chocolate definitely melts through with the heat from the espresso, and you have like a chocolatey espresso mixture at the bottom of your cup, and then it goes over with steamed milk. And then I do one more mix so that it's fully incorporated, and that is a mocha. Absolutely delicious. Just keep in mind you might want to do a quick stir if you end up with somebody who doesn't make the coffee the way that I do. Flat white was sort of new in the coffee shops that I started working at during the time that I was working there. Kind of confusing to me because to me it just sounds like a latte. It's a shot of espresso with steamed milk on top. I will say I've had a flat white, and in comparison to a latte, it tastes weaker. I don't know exactly why it tastes weaker. You know, new baristas, let me know what I'm saying if I'm saying something wrong. Baristas, roast me in the comments. Cafe au laits, they sound so fancy. I swear, a lot of these sound so fancy and they're not. So a cafe au lait is basically half and half. So one half of coffee, just drip coffee, and another half of milk, hot milk. So the only difference between an au lait and just like a heavily milky regular drip coffee is that you're adding hot milk, so it's hot all the way through. That's actually smart. I don't know why it gets a fancy name, but that's smart because then your coffee is hot fully through, as opposed to hot coffee and then you throw in cold milk and then it's just like lukewarm and disgusting. I don't have that problem because I don't add that much milk to my coffee, but if you did have that problem, order an au lait from this point forward. It is called Cafe au lait, and I've tried it before. Tastes pretty good. Tastes like a drip coffee with milk, except temperature is better. That was it for the hot beverages. There's just a small few of cold beverages I'm going to be talking about. So we've got the iced coffee, which I don't think I need to explain. It's iced coffee. There's ice, there's milk and sugar if you want it. Iced coffee. Great. Then there's iced espresso. That's a shot of espresso over some ice cubes. You put the ice cubes in first, and then you add in the espresso so the ice melts a little bit and becomes a little bit more smooth. Super delicious. I used to have that all the time in the summer when I used to work at the museum. I do recommend for my coffee lovers. And then there's cold brew. Now, I wanted to mention cold brew because there is a difference between iced coffee and cold brew. In my opinion, cold brew is 10 billion times better, and I'll tell you why. Iced coffee is a cup full of ice with hot coffee poured over, and then your milk and sugar. Cold brew coffee was specifically brewed in the fridge overnight or however long, and it's just cold from the very start. So once you pour it into your cup, it's just a full-bodied cold coffee as opposed to throwing hot coffee over ice. Now, why does that make such a big difference? It's the brewing process, and that's the whole thing with coffee in general, right? A lot of people are coffee snobs because they talk about the brewing process, and they're, in their own merit, they're right. There is different processes of making a really good cup of coffee. We know this, and I'll actually talk about it in a second. Yeah, cold brew coffee is brewed for cold consumption. Iced coffee is not. It's more of a convenience. There's a huge taste difference, in my opinion. You can taste different notes of coffee. I know this is sounding really snobby, but you can really taste the difference. I mean, go get yourself an iced coffee and then a cold brew coffee and drink them next to each other, if possible, without milk and sugar, so you can actually taste what they taste like. There's a huge difference. If you want a really, really good cup of iced or cold coffee, go with the cold brew if that's an option. I should mention a couple of tea drinks. I remember working at the museum, somebody who came from the UK asked me for a London fog. You brew Earl Grey tea. So you brew that however long you're supposed to steep Earl Grey tea. You add vanilla syrup to the tea, and then you add hot steamed milk on top of that. It sounds absolutely delicious. I've never had it before. Chai in actual coffee shops are made with a concentrate, so it comes in like this bottle jug of chai. So it's not chai tea. You have to dilute it with something. And when you're asking for a chai latte, we dilute it with hot milk. So we put a little bit of that concentrate, maybe like a couple tablespoons, that's it. And because the concentrate is so powerful, adding that milk in, you won't even notice that it's a concentrate. I used to live on iced soy vanilla chai lattes when I used to work at Bouchon. So what that basically is, it would be the chai mixture, some vanilla syrup at the bottom, and then you pour in your soy milk, mix it through really, really well. Oh my god, I used to live on it every Friday afternoon when I was getting off shift. Make me one of those big boys, and oh my gosh, so good. Another drink is a dirty chai, which is basically a chai latte in the same exact recipe. You just add a shot of espresso on top. I've never had it. We're not really experimental in regular coffee shops. It's just we focus on the coffee, we focus on the tea, and that's pretty much it. But I do recall having, I think we called it a Snickers latte or something. 1 pump of caramel, 1 pump of chocolate syrup, added the espresso. I probably did a double espresso, mixed it in really well, and added hot milk on top, and it tasted like a Snicker or a Twix. What is it? Some sort of candy bar. Very good, very sweet if you like that kind of thing. I think that's pretty much it. Now I'm going to share some useful secrets, or at least the ones that I know of. When we would make hot chocolate, we used half and half as the milk, like the entire cup. It would be chocolate syrup at the bottom. I like to not dilute it, but I would put a drop of hot water just to loosen it up so that it wouldn't glob down at the bottom of the cup. And then the rest of the cup was steamed half and half. It sounds gross to me. The reason why we did it was to ensure that the hot chocolate was super luxurious and creamy and delicious, and we never had a problem. Another super monumental tip: when you go to order an iced beverage, ask them for a specific amount of ice. Say half the cup of ice. Say very light on ice. You can say no ice. And the reason why is because, say this is your cup, this is your beverage. As a standard, we are trained to put the ice like up here, even up top, like loaded with ice. Like honestly, we're gypping you. We're filling it up with that much ice so that once we put the hot espresso or whatever it is that we're putting in there, the ice will melt down a little bit and it will fit exactly the amount of ice into the cup so that we give you the most minimal amount of beverage. Because let's be honest, once you remove all that ice from the cup, you've got like this much beverage. So you're sort of being robbed. If you can do without ice and you want the most maximum amount of beverage, ask for no ice or ask for light ice if you want a little bit of ice. It's usually never, ever a problem. And I honestly felt horrible when I was a barista, but you know, it's a barista job. You don't fight it. Another monumental tip, and please, I don't understand why you're doing this. Just don't do it from this point forward unless you really enjoy stale coffee. If you come to the store near closing or at the end of the day, you're gonna get stale coffee. You're gonna get the stalest coffee of the day. Closing for customers is 8 p.m. Closing for baristas is 6:30. We're prepping in our head. We're prepping what we need to clean down. We're break down all of these things. So we're not brewing an extra pot at 7 p.m. if we close at 8 p.m. If you show up maybe even at 6:30, you're probably going to get stale coffee too. It's just the reality of it. So don't drink coffee that late either. Just don't do that. No. Get some water. Get something else. This one might be helpful. I don't know if you already knew this, but different milks make different textures. Say you get an almond milk cappuccino and you get a whole milk cappuccino, they're going to taste entirely different because they create different textures. So I would just keep that in mind when you're ordering. A lot of people don't know what kind of milk to use based on the drink that they're going to get. Obviously, dietary restrictions will sort of limit you, but if you're off limits, you might want to consider, you know, experimenting with which kind of milk texture is your preference. Milk alternatives will be more airy and bubbly. Whole milk, half and half, they're going to be like really thick. Took a quick break, but I am back, and last section I'm going to be talking about is coffee at home tips. This isn't particularly barista tricks, it's just tricks of knowing how to deal with coffee. Let's start with cold brew. Cold brew is actually really easy to achieve at home. So what you need to get is a cold brewing system. System sounds scary, but it's not at all. You basically just need to get a container that has a mesh in the middle so that you can put your coffee in. Some of the local coffee shops in New York have these for sale. So I would look around. I would look for a really good quality one. The one that I got is actually from Amazon, and I wouldn't recommend it only because it's flimsy, but it gets the job done. And yeah, so you just need one of those. You basically fill the middle mesh section with your favorite coffee ground, and what I like to do is sort of prime the coffee grounds, which you should be doing with cold or hot coffee. Running some filtered water through that mesh before you hook it up to the system, and you'll know what I'm talking about, so that it gets wet inside before you just dump water into the base of the cold brew system. This sort of blooms the coffee grounds, hook it onto the top, fill the rest of the base with filtered water, let it sit in your fridge for 12 plus hours. You've got yourself some cold brew. And don't forget to discard the grounds in the middle once you've gotten your cold brew, because you don't want it sitting in there too long and then it just becomes stale tasting or syrupy almost. Finally, the last tip, which might be the most helpful because I see a lot of questions asking about it. What's the difference between a pour over and a French press? If you hear noise in the background, it's church bells. I don't understand why. The major deciding differences between a pour over and a French press is what kind of taste are you looking for. If you want something light, smooth, a little less grit, go for the pour over. If you want something that is more bold and rich, definitely go for the French press. Also, things to note, the pour over, you need to use filters on the top in order to filter the coffee grounds into the bottom where the liquid sits. And so you can do two options for that. You can do a reusable one, or you can do paper filters, which is the most standard one. I recommend using a reusable one because I haven't noticed a big difference in using that as opposed to paper filters. Also, it's eco-friendly. But if you choose to go the traditional route and use paper filters, rinse out those paper filters because you're getting papery, filmy taste in the initial brewing if you don't rinse it. So just give it a quick rinse. If you go the French press route, things to know about that is the French press has a very particular process. So it starts with blooming, letting it sit, and then pressing it down all the way. When you're letting it sit, you have to let it sit for at least 4 minutes so that it can really extract, and then you push it down very slowly. The slower that you push it down, the better, so that you can ensure that you're not going to get any grounds into your cup of coffee. Just something to note. And when I say blooming, this is actually something that is a factor for both pour-overs and French presses. And I also mentioned it with the cold brew. So blooming is a technique that is used to get the most out of the coffee grounds. You sort of prime it so that it tastes better. For the French press, when it's sitting there and it's brewing for 4 minutes, that's a process that can be amplified if you bloom it first. And the same with the pour over. With the pour over, you're going to have to gradually add hot water. If you dump all the hot water in, you're not going to get the best experience. So you pour very slowly, which is why there's usually a tool with a really long, narrow spout that allows you to do this gradually, every once in a while. Let the water sit, go down, and then you do it over again. So the timing can end up being about the same. You might spend some more time over the pour over depending on how much coffee you want, and the same with the French press. It's very much worth it. You throw a little bit of hot water over the grounds for, I would say, 30 seconds, and then continue the process. For pour over, bloom it, 30 seconds, and then start pouring in your water gradually and gradually until you've got all your water down at the bottom. For French press, bloom it, wait 30 seconds, fill it in with the water, close it up, wait 4 minutes, and then push it down. And then that's how you get your coffee. If you have questions, feel free to reach out to me. Thank you so much for watching. I hope this was interesting, informative, whatever it was, entertaining. I don't know. I hope it wasn't boring. But like if you liked this video, subscribe if you want to see more videos from me. I post a video every Friday. And yeah, I'll see you in the next one.